Okay, well, this is a part of a Rumi poem that's called, oh, I've got to turn off my thing there. It's a part of a Rumi poem that's called The Community of Spirit, which I've been thinking about a lot as I work with this community of spirit that we are. And this is just part of the whole poem, but it's a part that I think works with what we're going to do today. And, you know, it's amazing that this guy, Rumi, lived in the 13th century. He had made the whole, we're talking about the whole real course of evolution today. We think evolution stopped with human beings or something, and just with our body and, you know, the organs and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But really, we're talking about the evolution of the spirit, really, with the evolution of consciousness from an Asian point of view, the evolution of the human being, which it doesn't stop with the material. And we're going to get into that a bit. But this is called the community of spirit. So I'll give this to you a couple times. If you happen to have the Essential Rumi, like on your bookshelf or something, I think it's on page 3. It's one of the first ones in the book. There is a community of the spirit. Sit down in this circle. Close both eyes to see with the other eye. Open your hands if you want to be held. Sit down in this circle. Quit acting like a wolf and feel the shepherd's love filling you. Sit down in this circle. Be empty of worrying. Think of who created thought. Why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open? Sit down in this circle. Move outside the tangle of fear thinking. Live in silence. Flow down and down and down in widening rings of being. Sit down in this circle. There is a community of spirit. Sit down in this circle. The picture that we had on the screensaver, if you got in early enough, was a kind of spiral staircase going down, and then it was open to a picture of the moon, or at least quarter moon, you know, the half of the moon. And it's a big Sufi symbol. The moon is a Sufi symbol of, because the moon has no light of its own. It reflects the light from the sun. And so that's how the Sufis saw everything in creation. The moon was a symbol of that. And so we're reflecting the light of the spirit of, you know, Allah, if you're, you know, to be, you know, in the Muslim community, but we reflect the light. Nick and I were talking about the Moses as he came back, you know, from meeting the spirit, and he was radiant. He was radiant. It's why you see halos, you know, in iconography of all the traditions, Buddhist, Sufi. Well, Sufis don't put the guys in pictures, but they understand the halo. The Jewish people as well, no representation, but that's what they were talking about. And because of translation, things that get lost, we're going to try to translate some things because things got lost in translation when they put the gospel into Latin, or the Old Testament into Latin, into the Vulgate. The word for that they were using out of the original Jewish scripture, they translated radiance and horn were the same word. So a lot of times now, that's why you would see pictures of Moses with horns, because they mistranslated the word. They took the wrong meaning. You know, they were trying to say he was radiant. He was radiant because was still radiating the light of the spirit. So close both eyes to see with the other eye. That's why in many forms of contemplation, You shut your eyes, close both eyes to see with the other eye. Open your hands if you want to be held. This is all about this opening all the way through. Sit down in this circle. Quit acting like a wolf and feel the shepherd's love filling you. Sit down in this circle. Be empty of worrying. Think of who created thought. Why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open? Sit down in this circle. The circle he is talking about is the Sufi circle. We have our own version of it here. Sit down in this circle. Then he says, move outside the tangle of fear thinking. It's got the same image Jesus used. Move outside the tangle of fear thinking. Live in silence. Flow down and always widening rings of being. Sit down in this circle. So he's given us, in a way, this move down in these widening, ever widening rings of being. He's giving us a kind of evolutionary map there. And I'm going to show you how we're going to translate it here today. I'll just go to the screensaver for a minute to give you this is you'll understand what a great artist I am when you see this. Where is it? Oh, heck, it's not even up. Oh yeah, there you go. Sorry, you're not saved from this. I don't know, I'm not seeing it here. Let's see if we're seeing it there. Yeah, there it is. So we're gonna work through this. These are the widening rings of being, moving down. And we're gonna sort of go through these. This is actually a journey through consciousness. You know, one of the things that all the non-dual mystic traditions agree with is that spirit is, God is, whatever you want to call it. They know there's something transcendent here that's sort of like the moon, you know, that gives the moon the light, and they intuit this, and they've always had it. But there's been levels of actually being able to teach about it, levels to be able to talk about it. And the first level is really the level of belief in something transcendent, belief in spirit. And it's the earliest, and it's still probably the most common stage. And there's, within the realm of belief, there's levels, at least 3 levels. The first, we all went through this, and we all, if you had any kids, you understand this. It's this magic level of belief where you believe in magic. It's the level where you're 2 years old and you cover your, you know, and you think no one can see you, that kind of thing. And you know, 2-year-olds think they're, you know, they can fly. And if you want to understand the level of magic belief, you watch children's cartoons, you know, superheroes. You know, this is a certain level. There's not entirely, they're onto something, but, you know, also if it turns in the wrong direction, you know, you believe you're it. Well, you can live your whole life believing you're it, and you're the king of the universe, the master of the universe. We've known people like that in our lives, some of them political. And in terms of my years spent in Haiti, for instance, voodoo would be a good example of magical belief, because they believe people are putting spells on them and whatever. And so this is a sort of the early stages of it, a kind of a magical belief. Then, you know, evolution happened and we got to the level of mythic belief. Mythic belief's a little different. It's not egocentric now. It's sort of ethnocentric, tribal, and sociocentric. So we have the buildings of institutions, religions, belief systems. Unfortunately, you know, if you're a student of history, you know, then, you know, you got a lot of my God's bigger than your God. My God's better than your God. I once saw in Chicago, I once saw a bumper sticker as, my God is a sun God, your God is a moon God. and it had, it was an anti-Islamic kind of thing. Well, all right, that's junior high playground kind of stuff, but there it is. Oh, well, I think if you were going to copy this thing, we would have copied it by now, so we can stop this thing. Yeah. So that's mythic realism, and so it becomes institutionalized. It becomes ethnic. We have our gods. You have your gods. I mean, the God of the God of the Jews and the God of the Muslims and the God of the Christians is technically the same God, but we're still fighting about it. So those are some of the drawbacks of that. And also, when you get into mythic belief, then you believe that in the other. And so it starts giving a dualistic feel to religion. And, I grew up believing that all Protestants were going to go to hell. I mean, that's just how I was taught as a Catholic. Don't hang around with those people. They're doomed, that kind of stuff. So there's mythic belief. And now you can actually say there's rational belief. You can go up the level of even consciousness. Rational belief would be really the belief in materialist science, scientific materialism. People believe they're just the data from the senses, data that you can find on machines, and that's it. There ain't no more. And they've thrown out all the previous stuff as mumbo jumbo or whatever. But then they also throw out, along with that bathwater, with the magic and mythic kind of bathwater, they throw out anything that could be beyond the rational mind. That the transcendent, what's transrational, gets thrown out with what's pre-rational. So then you're left in a kind of sort of a flatland of scientific materialism, which I think, besides the fact that she's a good writer, which is the attraction of like Harry Potter, because Harry Potter is about magical. It's about magic again. And people want to realize there's something more than, 9 to 5 and, especially the kids now, they're wondering, what kind of world is this? There's no magic in it. Yeah, but that's pre-rational. It's good writing though, good stories. You can, get some kids reading. I used to love when kids were reading Harry Potter in my junior high because they're reading a lot, So even when you reach reason, if you believe that's all there is, and then you start to look down on other things, organized religion, but you just believe there's just, when I'm dying, that's it. Well, that's the extension but that's a belief. Even atheism, belief. Okay. And the problem with belief is it's all translative. You're just translating like from one language to another. Maybe you join a new church. Well, you got a new language for it, but it's all translative. And actually, it always leaves the separate self intact. Yeah, because we're talking about a community of the spirit here. And as long as you leave the separate self intact, depending on all the other neurotic baggage you have, it can be sort of harmful. So that's the belief level. Now, faith, that next level of the thing, because a lot of people use faith and belief interchangeably. It's not. Faith is what happens when what you believe becomes unbelievable. You believe this for your whole life, and then all of a sudden you don't believe it anymore. Things happen. You say, when the believable becomes unbelievable, then you're into faith. And this is not a comfortable place because it's sort of the land of 1,000 questions with no answers. It's what Rumi was writing about when we talked about you got to learn to live the questions. So things are, you don't have much ground to stand on when you enter this realm. Okay, Merton entered this realm. Merton commented on this realm. His famous one-liner, he said, the opposite of faith is not doubt, it's certainty. Let that sink in for a minute. Because when you meet people who have, they're in their mythic belief system and they are sure that this is the way the universe is, and you're wrong because you do not belong to my church. He said, yeah, that's not faith. The opposite of faith is not doubt, because doubt is what the realm of faith is all about. It's certainty. Yeah, the guys who read the Bible verses and pointed out that they take the Bible literally, or they think, well, our My God is the best God. So that's not faith. Faith is you're having to trust, you're navigating this, and you got a lot more questions. Merton once said, he said, people think I have answers. I don't have answers. He says, I got a lot of questions. I thought when you were by the time you were 71, you had all the answers. Anybody who's approaching that age or older knows what a joke that is. No. And this is exactly the kind of universe we're in. The reason that quantum physicists start sounding like mystics is because they got to the end of physics and it didn't have the answers they were looking for. It was all uncertain, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. They realized, yeah, I mean, chemistry, physics, these are the sciences of the material world. But then when they really studied either the really small or the really large material world, either quantum physics or astrophysics, they realized they end up with more questions with no answers. And so they don't confirm that mysticism, science, we have this idea, well, if a physicist said it, there must be something to it, but it's the opposite way around. These guys started reading the mystics because the mystics were in touch with this third widening circle, which is direct experience of the spirit. That's where we're heading in a few minutes when we stop the words and we go into the silence, you see, because the direct experience is a deeper, you can't talk your way there. And so all the mystic traditions, they revere silence. I mean, it's almost like the Holy Grail, especially in Buddhism. You just let go of the words. I was telling Nick when the direct experience is where we head when we end the first portion of our meeting here and we go into just the silence, to have a chance of having direct experience in the silence of something that transcends all this, whatever name you want. Nature mysticism is in that. Rebecca has given us a couple courses in deity mysticism from the Tibetans, where you imagine a deity hanging over your head. And the Tibetans are great in this, in terms of actually giving you a kind of runway to where you start to have direct experience of something that's beyond me, beyond the idea of just me, that there's something more. And don't take my word for it, as the Buddha said. Sit your ass down, shut up, and then sit in the silence and see what you experience, whatever that is. Start to pay attention to it, So that's the third level. That's the third level. And when you go into this level of consistency, I mean, even if just in this group, well, at least once a week for 20 minutes, we drop down to this level, where we try to leave the rational the world of logic and words behind. When I started in direction with Father Gregory at the monastery, after 10 years of Zen meditation, he's always used the word meditation, although the Zen guys just, say just sit, But I said, and all the Trappists were talking about contemplation. And so I said, well, what's the difference? He said, well, we have both words. Well, Merton was a Trappist. They have both words, meditation and contemplation. They know what they're talking about. And then that's why Merton, I think, was attracted to the Trappists, or to the Tibetans, because the Tibetans use both words. They have it in Tibetan, of course, but meditation means you're working with the mind, a small m, in words, and reflecting on those words. So when you do your morning reading, you're really meditating. Reading is meditating. This talk is a meditation right now. I'm using words, and you're thinking about the words. Maybe you're reflecting about the words. Maybe you reflect on them later. That's all of what both of those traditions, Trappist or Tibetan, would call meditation. Okay, and then contemplation is when you leave all the words behind. You go into what the Buddhists would call the emptiness, which is the same as the silence. And you just hang out there. When I said, well, can you give me to ask Gregory, can you give me a kind of short little thumbnail sketch of contemplation? He said, oh yeah, just wasting time with God. I thought that was great because, the idea of wasting time, it's an interesting term uh, because time doesn't exist in meditation. It only exists if you're waiting for the bell, of course. Well, then you're back in mental, like, gee, when's the bell going to ring, or time, because time doesn't exist there. So that's, in a sense, you're wasting time with God. You're just hanging out with the transcendent, however it's better to have no concept of that, which is why the Muslims have no conceptual art. They just have this big black cube in Mecca, you see. So contemplation is, in the Dalai Lama will spend 45 minutes in meditation, prayers, visualizations, all that stuff is preamble, that's meditation. And then he goes into, emptiness and no words. And then he's going into direct experience. So you don't get rid of belief to evolve. Belief can still be there. Faith is definitely there. But then, you can take the leap, which we're going to take in a couple minutes, just into meditation, into contemplation, where all the words are left behind. And the various traditions have ways to leave the words behind. We talked about in the Christian contemplation, the centering prayer, you leave all the words behind, but when you get tangled in the words, you can use a word to cut through that, get you out of the tangle of fear thinking, as Rumi says. And every tradition has, some tools to help you out. But then once you get free of this identifying with the thoughts, well, then you're back in sort of like what, you're just back there as the mirror of the heart with whatever's arising. Incredible amount of stuff comes and goes when you just do nothing, when you just waste time with God. Incredible amount of stuff. Valuable, crazy, it's all, but you don't, you're just the witness to it. Okay. A future time we'll talk about what that mirror is. It's not like a normal mirror that you look in. It's a different kind of mirror, but it is a portal. So just to be a pure awareness of everything that's coming and going, arising, displaying for a while, disappearing. You'll see that that's actually the form, but that's actually direct experience of what all of this is. See, yeah, and then finally, when you get to the and we'll talk about this, this to go from having these glimpses like you have in meditation to having these glimpses of something bigger in, how do you go to actually being spirit? There's belief in spirit, there's faith in spirit, there's direct experience of spirit, and then there's actually being spirit itself. How you make that jump from level 3 to level 4, if you want to say, is years. If you don't have a contemplative practice, there's probably no way you're even going to get contemplative practice takes you into level 3. You can have it normally, just walking along in nature, and you get a feel of transcend. That's nature mysticism. But then that comes, that goes. How do you actually have like a kind of steady state? I've got one more. This is really to end up. This is really a rough diagram, but it'll give you an idea of how we're talking about not leaving anything behind, but actually integrating it. These are the widening rings of being. I can get rid of this one. So there's nothing wrong with belief, nothing wrong with faith. You don't have to leave it behind. It wasn't a mistake, but they're widening circles of being, you see. And then there's direct experience. And then finally, there's just a kind of sustained practice, which notice it's not a solid circle. There's all sorts of room for you to grow into really being spirit itself, actually coming home so that's just another way of looking at it, but that's an integral way of looking at it, how to integrate all of these things, belief, faith, experience, through contemplative practice. It just ripens you and ripens you and ripens you. And, who knows, plan on buckling up for the rest of your life, because people will often say, well, how long does that take, until you just are spirit? Dalai Lama's been around 14 times. I don't know, but you're definitely getting the ball moving in the right direction when you take 20 minutes like we're going to do here and just waste time with God. Just be there. And then when you get caught up in the thought world, which is a little smaller circle, you notice when you're really caught up with thinking, things shrink a little bit. They might be interesting, but they shrink a little bit. And then when you let go of it, however you do, sometimes you can just do it just by noticing it. All of a sudden, it gets wider. And actually, there's no boundary to that mind you're in when you let go of thinking. There's no boundary to it. It's infinite. But because we're still in this separate self kind of mentality, you don't notice it. But the more, every time you let go of, you're really digging some thought or something or trying to get rid of it and you let go of it, well, actually you go back to like infinity. That has no time, no space. That can't die. And you get used to that. Hey, yeah, okay. You lose a lot of fear about this, end of the road thing we think, everybody dies. Yeah. So, okay. So this is all very interesting, I think, but you want to let go of it now. Because so what happens after a while, altered states, which you can have anyway, you can take drugs, you could be in nature, you could have these glimpses of something bigger, altered states. That's not the deal. It's to have altered traits. You become kinder, you become more compassionate, you become more patient. This happens over time and with a lot of help, with teachers who can teach you and with a community of spirit like this is. So we're all in this together when we're going to switch over now to the meditation. So you can start to go into meditation mode physically if you move around a little bit. But this is, we're helping one another as even virtually, even in virtual space, our presence is helping everybody have a better shot at experiencing something transcendent. So, okay, Jill will stop the recording and we'll move into direct experience here.